Welcome back to the infamous project, guys. I'm super excited for another DIY inspired project slash Foxbody hack, and that is the infamous quarter glass moldings and how you can repair them yourself and get professional results without spending $1,000+ on getting them professionally restored. You can get the results at your own home on your own time, and you can see some of the results sitting right here on the right hand side. So, I love doing these videos. We've done other little hacks like how to fix your saggy map pockets, how to do interior restoration, painting plastics, how to even dye your leather, so on and so forth. But this one, I think, hands down, can transform the look of your Fox. There's nothing worse than having a beautiful paint job where these quarter moldings are all pitted and faded, and this process is going to help you guys get what look like brand new OEM quarter glass windows. So when I was doing some research, I reached out to an Instagram user called Donkey Fix It. Some of you guys might know this guy as he has an amazing car collection, and he's bought two red 93 Cobras, one actually being a Cobra R at Barrett-Jackson in the past few years. Well, I saw him working on one of his coupes. I think it was a Reef Blue, maybe it was Calypso. I don't remember off the top of my head, but he was restoring his quarter glass windows, and he was using regular spot putty. So I reached out to him and I'm like, what's the longevity like? Do you like the finish? And he couldn't say enough that he's been doing it for 20 years and had really good results. And I'm sure that's the case. However, he is from out west of Canada, and the climate kind of just chills, between maybe 30 degrees and up to maybe 80s, 90s with a heat wave. So it doesn't really have that extreme hot or extreme cold. So some of you out there have probably seen people do restorations on these things, and the one that I hate the most is when people just decide to paint them body color with the car. There's a couple other ways that I've seen these restored. I've seen them restored with people using epoxies. I've seen people just filling them as much as they can with high build primer, and some people just painting them and hoping for the best. So the thing that's really important to remember with these guys is this is rubber. It's flexible. And when I got that 88 notch, the Super Noof, somebody had repaired the quarter glass windows, and there was big cracks in the moldings where the repairs had failed. So that's when I started doing more investigation into this, and I'm like, what kind of products can I use that, if they're in extreme conditions, if you're in the southern US and you got those 120 degree days all the way up to here in Canada where you're -20 and you have that extreme cold, what is going to bond, what's going to last, so on and so forth. So I did some research and I found this polyester-based glazing putty. Now, this stuff is super flexible, and I found another product made by Proform, but this guy I could get my hands on much quicker. So this can actually bend up to 70% before it cracks, which is extremely impressive. I'll show you guys firsthand the flexibility of this polyester glazing putty. So this is just a little bit of leftover that I had, and look at that flex. So they say you can go up to 70 degrees before this will break. I've got that pretty much bent all the way around, and that is just super, super small slick. So you can imagine how well this will work in any pits or grooves that you have in your quarter windows, and you'll have the durability that will last a long time in your quarter glass. So when this cures up, you can sand this down, and you're going to have a nice surface to be able to prime on top. So now moving on to the primer, it's extremely important that we now have a surface that's going on top of something that's flexible that can flex as well. So I am using this high build flexible primer, which is actually in a satin black as well, to ensure that we're keeping all of our colors consistent. In case for whatever reason you get a scratch or something else, the color is there. And this will also allow us to use less top coat at the end when we're spraying on those final coats. So this guy here, flexible, and it's a high build, so it will fill any little pits or maybe little nicks that are missed by the glazing putty or maybe some sanding marks, so on and so forth. So you're going to do a couple coats of this on top of that. And then finally, everything's going to be topped off with a Marhide satin black trim specific paint. Now, this as well is flexible. So if you notice, there's a common theme here. We know that the moldings on the windows are flexible. So we're using a flexible filler, a flexible primer, and a flexible paint. So we'll make sure that we have the longevity that is required to make sure that our Fox Body core glass window moldings last as long as possible, and in this case, potentially even longer than the OEM versions that didn't have any type of protective top coat on them. So we're going to go ahead and get started now and get this masked up and start spreading our polyester fill and get all these pits filled. All right, guys, you really don't need very much of the glazing putty, and I would suggest just doing small little batches. So, just make a couple small batches, mix what you need to start, and then if you need more, go ahead and mix some more. The stuff goes a really long way, and I'm pretty sure you can buy smaller tubes, which means you don't need something like this. It could probably fix a couple hundred quarter window moldings. So you can get a tube like this, and this stuff is great. You can use it on a lot of other things. If you got some other little bodywork projects, it's really good to use on top, as kind of your last filler for any of those projects that you might have. So one other thing is I have cleaned everything down here really well. So you need to make sure that your surface is nice and clean. Now, I'm actually just going to spread a little bit on with the spreader. To start. And then I'm going to go over with my razor blade. Because you want to push it into the hole, into all the little pits. So you can see that this stuff sets up extremely fast, and that's why you sort of want to work in sections and make sure that you can kind of control the areas that you're working with and get the coverage that you need. So we've done pretty good over here. There's some more on this edge that I need to get. The lower side of this molding is actually in really good shape. Just some sanding will fix that. There's a little bit of pitting in this area here that I'm going to get. And so I'm hoping that in one more batch, I'll be able to focus on this area and a little bit over here. And then we'll have all our fill that's required before we start the sanding process. All right, so I've let the glazing putty set up for, I don't know, maybe 15 minutes or so. Now we can start the sanding process. Like I said, I do tend to use a block still, just to make sure everything is nice and straight. And this is actually 180 grit sandpaper, so don't be afraid to touch the rubber a little bit. That'll kind of knock down any little tiny imperfections that might be in the moldings. All right, guys, so I've sanded off all of the glazing putty And you can see there's actually not that much left. It's really just that little bit that's sitting in the little pits and scratches that we wanted to make sure that were filled. Now we're going to go ahead and do probably 2 to 3 coats of the high build primer. Alright, so I got 3 coats of primer on the moldings here. So now I'm going to go ahead and go back to the block with some 600 grit sandpaper. Go ahead and sand everything so it's all smooth and consistent. You'll be able to see, you know, if there is a few little imperfections, you should be able to sand them away. If not, you know, you might need to put a little bit more filler if needed. But otherwise, if everything is good, then you can go ahead and start applying your top coat. If you look real close right here, you can see some little bits of pits that the primer is sunk into. So what you want to do is just keep blocking. Until they're gone. Alright guys, we're all sanded down. Just finished wiping everything down now with some brake clean. So what you guys are looking for after you've sanded down that high build primer is pretty much a smooth finish, the way that you would want to see it once it's painted. So if you can see sanding marks, if you can see pitting, if you can see any of that stuff at this point, you're going to have to go back over it and fill in or cover up those little spots before you go ahead and lay down the paint. Because the paint is just going to soak down and it's going to expose any other imperfections that you might have left behind. So this guy is looking all nice and smooth all the way around. Going to give it one final wipe down, and then I'm going to go ahead and start applying the top coat here, which again is this Marhide black satin trim paint. So going to probably do 3 coats of this, leaving about 10 minutes in between each coat, and we will see what this final product looks like. Alright guys, so I actually had the tiniest of 2 little pinholes that were sitting in that primer. So I've gone ahead and used just a little bit of regular spot putty. I'm going to let that set up for 30 minutes and just lightly scuff that down. We'll be able to top coat on top of this. But just want to make sure that this thing turns out perfect. So first coat is done. I'm going to go ahead and mist on a second coat. You don't want to put too much on. You don't want runs. You don't want buildup. So again, mist on. Make sure you get full coverage, 3 full coats, and we'll see how it looks. The 3 coats are done on these window moldings, and it's time to unmask everything. Look at that, just like new. So if you've happened to get any overspray on the glass, you can simply take a razor blade with a little bit of glass cleaner. And you can go in there, go along your edges, get everything nice and clean, and your glass should be looking as good as new. So these quarter windows were actually in a lot better shape than some of them out there, but the same principles and procedures will work. So just follow them, take your time, fill everything in. And again, I can't say enough for this glazing putty. I'm hopeful that these will actually last longer than what came from factory, considering that there was no protective coating on this rubber that when they came off the assembly line. So there you have it, how to restore your quarter window moldings on your Fox Body.